Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. We're so glad you're with us today to stay curious. We're coming to you from Wallops Island from this fabulous NASA photographer, Bill Ingalls photo along the Atlantic Ocean there. Not exactly sure where Wallops Island was on the map until I looked it up, but Marty, as I say hi to Marty Winkle, my co producer, it's actually close to Washington, D.C. when I looked at it like that. I usually see maps of all the intercoastal islands and stuff, but we're going to feature the photography of our good partner at the American Space Museum, Mark Usciak. Mark sent me some great pictures that he's taken over the years. Uh, Living in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, most of his life, he's always going out there to see these rocket launches, sometimes paid and sometimes for fun. So, Mark Usciak, thank you for sharing your photos today on Stay Curious. As we kick off an episode here, I think it's like 994, something like that. We're going to celebrate our 1000th episode on Leap Day, February 29th. So make plans for that next week. So let's look at what we got a little bit going on with our wonderful nonprofit. Of course, we are an official Florida 501c3 charity nonprofit. So your money given to us is tax deductible, and we can take bushel baskets full of $100 bills anytime you want to send them to us. Just go to the link on our website, and we're always publishing other ways on Facebook and so forth that you can help us out. Or look at, after this program loads up, you can't do it while you're watching on YouTube, but there's a give thanks $ button on all the other recorded shows that you can give increments to us through PayPal. So we hope to make a little bit of money for the museum at our space memorabilia show, but it's just not about that. It's about the fellowship of like 13 vendors we're going to have there, all with great things to sell. So if you're a local person and want to pick up that autograph of one of your favorite astronauts, or some space swag, or just some cute artifacts from the space age, we've even got a vendor there that does some 3D printing of the Crew Dragon models and so forth. So you're going to find a little bit of everything at our partner, Beachside Hotel and Suites on Cocoa Beach. That's right beside Ron John's famous surf shop, across from IHOP over there. So our sponsors, the Museums of Brevard, that's the mob, 22 beautiful museums. Bid Again Auctions, that handles our now almost monthly auctions of space memorabilia. And we couldn't be talking to you without the computers and help and so forth of the computers, advancing education. What an outfit they are to provide laptops to school kids all over the county. And then, of course, our main sponsor, Ken Havicott, his wife, Teresa. They've been in the business over 50 years. We're so pleased that Ken supports us in so many ways, and he is our fixture and main supporter to help us pay the bills to run this Space Memorabilia show. Our third one, and it's the first one of 2024. We'll have another one July 27th. And November 2nd at the same location, Beachside Hotel. There's Ken and Teresa there at the Shuttle Fest last year. They pros at doing this. Ken will be giving free appraisals during the day. We also have Chuck Jeffrey from Bid Again Auctions will be there with free and honest appraisals. He is a mentor. He was mentored by Ken Havicott over here. And there's the two guys. One day I caught them out here snooping around our rocket garden there. But both of them, we would be closed if it wasn't for both of these gentlemen. I guarantee you that. And how they've helped us make money and found money. Chuck Jeffrey on the left, Ken Havicott on the right. Thank you for all you do to sustain our humble nonprofit. Well, there's my boss, Karan Conklin, always keeping me curious with things that she sees that I don't. And she came up with a good story that is kind of rattling people around the world as the United States and Congress and America's European allies were informed on Valentine's Day that Russia plans to develop an anti-satellite capability. It's unclear what their weapon plan is, or whether it involves detonating a nuclear explosive in space, or is it another anti-satellite technology based on a space-based nuclear reactor. The rumor is nuclear fuel of some form is involved in this. This is the launch this week of a spy satellite in Russia that I'm showing you there. According to the intelligence presented to the U.S. Congress, the U.S. military, quote, does not have the ability to counter such a weapon and defend its satellites. So reported the New York Times yesterday. So this is opening up a whole new can of worms. Orbital nuclear weapons are currently banned because of the Outer Space Treaty that was signed in 1967. You know, there's been no new treaty signed since then. Russia might be backing out of that treaty to further militarization of space. Of course, China's never signed that treaty. They weren't a military. They weren't even in outer space in 1967. So there's going to be a lot of attention to this under the Biden administration and to openly discuss actions necessary to respond. It comes from the president's office. We were used to, here's a couple spy versus spy satellites that we have up there. We know that 2 Russian satellites came within 100 miles of a U.S. satellite 4 years ago. They think they were chasing them down, stalking us to figure out what we were doing. 100 miles away, they can see the nuts and bolts on the side of that, any spacecraft from that distance. These spy satellites look down 200 miles, 250 miles, or some even 400 miles, and can tell what coin you have in your hand if you're standing on the street. You better believe it. So we're into a spy versus spy area there, and you know, it's all hard for common Joe and Jane America to sort it all out. We just kind of take it for granted that things are safe, but it's only safe because of the U.S. keeping up with our enemies, Russia and China, who want it to control the earth in a different way than we feel democracy should be. But I say to you, Marty, at least people, you know, don't believe that we landed a shuttle on the moon, or did we? Little joke I pulled up here. Our IT manager, Bruce Jacobs, turned me on to this new artificial intelligent graphics program called Gemini. I think it was called, it's called something else, Brant, or something like that before. But this AI's taken over. So I simply said to this AI program, give me a picture of a rocket landing on the moon. That's what I put down, Marty. Now, you know I wasn't expecting your lunar module that you work for. They've got a shuttle landing on the moon. Never happened, folks. All right, don't start thinking I'm a conspiracy theorist there. I just thought it'd be fun to show off a little silliness there. Well, we're going to talk seriously now about Wallops Island, the launch complex. Wallops Flight Facility is technically called. A really important unsung hero in NASA's scheme of rocket facilities. This has been used now since 1961. It launched its first rocket orbital satellite, established in 1943 for weather balloons, weather rockets, sounding rockets. The word sounding rocket is for these small little rockets that are like darts. I'm going to show you a couple of them that mostly go suborbital with payloads that can check out different sections of the atmosphere at different times of day. You get a lot of weather reports across the country every day by dozens of weather satellites being lofted up right at before dawn to get this assess the situation up there. So, well, our friend, like I said, Wallops Island, the first satellite was launched from it today, February 16th, 1961, 63 years ago. And there's a map of Wallops Island there, right there in the middle in the white, in Washington, D.C. You always see the outlet there of the barrier islands is what I'm trying to spit out. And many of you in Virginia and particularly Washington, D.C. area know this area very well. This is all, but where this is at is also where they do the, Mark Usciak said, the pony run, the famous horses going across the channel that everybody likes to be part of. So fairly close to Washington, D.C. The first satellite, there is the beautiful landscape of it up against the shore. Very simple facility. It doesn't need the rocket. There is the Northrop Grumman and Terry's rocket that launched the Cygnus supply ships to the International Space Station. I think over 20 were launched, these cargo ships to the International Space Station built by Northrop Grumman called Cygnus. They're not doing that anymore. SpaceX has got the contract for the next cargo ships from Northrop Grumman, but it's being rebuilt. Some of the pads, Mark Usciak informed me, for the company Firefly that's going to take over some of the other satellites and maybe eventually take over a cargo ship. But the first rocket launched from it was this one. And this was a 4-stage Scout booster, the first satellite launching from Wallops, the first satellite boosted by a solid fuel rocket was launched here. It was Explorer 9, a 12-foot. Let's look at Explorer 9 that was launched on this. Not that Explorer 9. For all of you to remember that. That's Explorer 9, okay? It is nothing more than an inflated balloon that was carefully and continuously photographed to allow scientists to conduct an unprecedented survey of the Earth's atmosphere, particularly the exosphere. The satellite first confirmed the daily bulging in the upper atmosphere caused by the sun's heating the air during the day and verified the model of temperatures developed with other satellite data. So when the sun starts heating up our Earth's atmosphere, things rise because heat rises, and there's a bulge over that area compared to the dark. The atmosphere is higher up appreciably than on the night side. We're going to talk a little more about that. Explorer 9 was the first spacecraft placed in orbit by an all-solid launch vehicle, meaning every stage was like gunpowder or your pop bottle rocket. And the first satellite successfully launched into orbit from Wallops Island. And it stayed up there for over 3 years, okay? All these little dots on this thing were to reflect back to Earth and supply data. Very simple way. No communication systems on it, things like that. Well, let's look at Wallops Island through the eyes of our friend's camera, Mark Usciak. Cool day there for a launch. This is as close as you get, I guess, to the launching without your remote cameras. This would be the equivalent of Kennedy Space Center's press area and the countdown clock. There's our buddy Mark there in front of the Ares and Terry's rocket. I believe this was the last one launched with the controversial Russian engines on them. If you wondered some of the photographers' rigs, how they get those photos so close up, where they're with remote cameras that are either triggered by sound or some can be triggered by lightning, sound, or ground vibrations, is what I was trying to say. And the cameras are inside there to be protected from the elements. Once you put your camera out there, it might be days till you can get it. There might be a rain delay. It might rain that night and be clear the next morning. So cameras are sensitive to wet, that's for sure, water and being dropped. Well, there's one of those scouts, one of those what we called sounding rockets. Some of them have a couple stages of solid rockets, just a glorified pop bottle rocket. All right. And there's a whole class of them there. And none of them are more than 50 feet tall. And of course, this Wallops Island attracts a lot of photographers. That could be a bird sanctuary for all. You see those photographers with their long lenses there. And I've been around photography long enough to know you see those white tan lenses. That is a Canon gear that I know my buddy Mark uses, and any dark ones there probably Nikon. Yes, you got a question, Marty?
We have a comment from Steve Jokum. Um, he says, I think the Northrop Grumman Cygnus still has flights to perform for NASA and the ISS, but the new Antares is still being developed. They're using the SpaceX Falcon 9 under contract.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. The new Ares is being built by Firefly, Mark Usciak told me, and it's still going to be called the Ares, though a different company's building it there. But yes, they're very important to keep our space station supplied with new food and gear, and they do that about every 4 months. But so thank you, Steve Jokums, another helpful contributor financially to the American Space Museum and his business, Lake County Spaceport up there, LakeCountySpaceport.com up there in Lake Michigan in Illinois. Well, here is the Wallops Island VAB, quotes, okay. That is their vehicle assembly building of sorts there. Doesn't have to be very big. And Mark, great picture he showed me of the drones that Navy uses. You forget about all the unmanned drones and how important they are to our nation's security, weather, communications, other things that you probably don't want to know about. But cool picture of a pilotless aircraft, loaded up with a lot of special equipment, no doubt. Well, there's the business end of that Antares rocket with the Russian engines on it that were, we bought these Russian engines. I do believe they were built in the Ukraine. Russia had no use for them, so they were very cheap and very efficient and good engines, but, you know, we wanted to be politically correct and have American-made stuff. Mark Usciak is quite a professional photographer. His eye just doesn't capture the detail like you see here of what's going on. By the way, that Antares above my head, the American flag, is probably no coincidence in Mark's mind, as he, like I said, is a true professional that took advantage of a gorgeous twilight evening there as the Antares rocket is taken out of its the processing building that we showed you there, taken out to the pad on one of the images there. There's another cool shot. The moon's just up there in the top there. So, and these are difficult shots, particularly at night with low light situations where you got to have maybe a tripod and a self timer. But a beautiful rocket, performed very well out there. Let me tell you a little bit more about Wallops Island. 16,000 launches have happened since 1945 to give information on characteristics of airplanes, launch vehicles, spacecraft. They would test a lot of the boilerplates like Big Joe and Little Joe. Some of those were tested at White Sands, but that generation of them to test, like the Mercury escape tower was tested out there at Wallops Island. There's the gantry going up on an Antares rocket. There have been probes launched to the moon. The atmospheric dust and environment explorer called Landy was launched on a Minotaur 5 rocket. The first time an American lunar mission had been launched from anywhere but Florida. That was in 2013. A lot of beach erosion, though, and I noticed that in some of the pictures. So some of the access roads and parking lots have had to be built as they get hit pretty hard by any of the hurricanes that come nearby. Hurricane doesn't have to go over them; they can get just by the surf. And there's a Mark Usciak launch photo. I'd say that's probably from the press site area that we showed you there. So very important. Wallops Island has been a real unsung hero in development of all kinds of things, scientific balloons, small launch vehicle research, mission planning lab, just how things are conducted. I'm looking at a picture of that Little Joe booster that was tested out there in 1960. parts of the Saturn V rockets. So, and then there's a night shot from a little different angle there by Mark Usciak. And there's the close-up shot with the remote cameras, and gorgeous as you see the flames coming out of there. And that is all triggered automatically. This might be a series of 10 photos that he was lucky to get before that cloud of rocket, cloud of fuel comes and engulfs that camera. So thank you, Mark Usciak, for sharing your artwork here with me after a brief conversation, and we're glad to celebrate the Wallops Island facility there 63 years ago, launching its first satellite. Well, speaking of satellites, we are a satellite of the sun, and that's our most important star. And this is the most important page to me that I look at every day, called spaceweather.com. On the left-hand side is a chart showing you how many sunspots are on the sun. And if you look down at the bottom, it tells you real quickly that there's, let's see, we've had no days without sunspots, but in 2016, 2019, we had 281 days without sunspots. 77% of the year was no sunspots. Today, the sun's covered with about over 3 dozen sunspots of various sizes. And why am I talking about this? Because just like the Explorer 9 figured out that the sun heats up our atmosphere on the daylight side is thicker than the night side, which is cooler, these sunspots from 93 million miles away can not only affect the Earth, but also all the way out to Neptune. So here's the sun, like let's say Thursday or Wednesday, and that sunspot group, that big one in the middle to the right, moves that far in just a day, okay? Sun takes 33 days to rotate, so it's so big and so close that actually the sides are 3 or 4 days each. And then so we just see stuff track across for about 2 weeks. And this stuff moves pretty quickly, but you can see this with safe filters. All the sunspots are numbered so scientists can talk about them. And that one on the right, I'm going to show you, it could have caused some problems, but it didn't. Well, here's 1900 to 2010. And this is the solar cycle. And the years are on the bottom, and the scale is the number of sunspots seen, okay? So, as you see, there is a peak and a trough of sunspot activity, and it is a 6-year difference, about 11-year total sun cycle from peak to peak. Look at the 1960, when it peaked at over 200 sunspots seen, all right, at the peak of the solar cycle. And then it dropped down to almost none 5 years later. And then it climbed back up to just over 100. So we don't know why the sun is more active at some of the peaks. We don't know why this is an 11-year cycle and not 15 or 25 years. These are the unknowns, and why NASA keeps exploring with some fabulous science out there. Here again is from 1975 to what's going on right now. Above my head, we have another solar peak hitting in 2020. Hardly no sunspots. Sunspots mean more activity, more of these flames, if you will, solar flares coming off. And when that happens, that electromagnetic energy and solar debris can hit the Earth and create aurora, or even knock out communications, because it acts like shorting out an electrical current. It can even affect Neptune, our furthest planet, 2 billion miles away. Here are the solar cycle peaks. As you see, there's on the bottom are years, and 2014 is a peak, and around 2000 is a peak. And the extra energy, 2 billion miles away from the sun, allows Neptune's atmosphere to heat up, as you see with the bright bands and bright areas that are photographed by the Hubble telescope. And then at a low above my head, there's no activity on there. So when we talk about global warming, we have to consider the sun's influence on everything in our solar system, even Neptune 2 billion miles away. Well, if I could look at the sun through a special filter, and the sun is the white circle in the middle. This is an occulting filter that's on a solar telescope that just looks at the sun all the time. This is what it looks like, not flames, but energy of gas. Coronal mass ejections is the proper term for this. And this is on Valentine's Day. Bottom left-hand corner, 24/2/14 at Universal Times, that date there. And if you can see the sun during the day, it is a dynamic. What we don't see, what's invisible to us, is just incredible. And what's happening on the right-hand side, for example, could be the electromagnetic energy off of these sunspots, not in the center, but on the edge, are what can really create problems for us. Here is the sun on one day, last week, February 13th. Look at all of the flares going off around it on one single day. Now, the white areas in the middle, those are flares going on too, but we don't see them side viewed. It was a tremendous energy day on the sun, seen in hydrogen alpha filters. Okay, a special filter to see. This is not a visual filter. You have to have a special filter to see all this, but amateur astronomers in their backyards do. What's circled there is a coronal mass ejection that is going to hit the Earth today and tomorrow. And here it is, every coronal mass ejection in the month of January. This is all of the flares in January, Marty. This is one day on February 13th. So yes, the sun is heating up big time. It's a nuclear bomb fusing in hydrogen to helium and other elements. But that's the whole month, and this is one day of flares. Just incredible what we understand. And there's that big one that you could see naked eye if you had the right filter to see it. It was so big. And look at that other coming off of there. See the sun up there in the yellow? This is, if you could see all the invisible electromagnetic electrons, the interplanetary shock waves, a lot of science going on here just to demonstrate that these flares can hit the Earth. And sometimes we dodge them, sometimes we get hit by them. One time we might get hit by a real powerful one that has in the past wiped out electrical grids in Canada, New York, and other countries around the world. Well, from the sun to the moon, go out and get you some moonshine tonight. The moon is way to the left of Jupiter, going to look beautiful. But I'm showing you the moon as you're looking down at the bottom of this picture of the moon. That is the southern hemisphere. Obviously, more craters at the very bottom of the moon there than at the very top of the moon. And of course, you got these smooth areas in the middle that were used to be seas of lava 3.5 billion with a B years ago. But this is a beautiful time to look at the moon with binoculars and see all these craters that are filled with shadows. That's why we see them. But right at the bottom of the moon, that is the destination. These are my photographs, by the way. At the tippy tip bottom, that is where Intuitive Machines Odyssey lander is going to land and attempt to land, hopefully next Thursday. Odysseus, or Odie, they call it for short, of course, was launched Thursday at 1 a.m. And it is on its way to the moon. It circled the Earth for about a day, and you can go to this website on YouTube. Go to YouTube, put IM-1 machines. I took off at 3 o'clock today. All right, so in 5 days, it's going to be landing on the moon. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday afternoon, it looks like. So they're 13 hours into the mission. They got more time than that. Why isn't that updated? Well, that was the latest one I took there. So you can go see this for yourself. All right. And it's been over 24 hours since they launched it. So NASA is flying a video and still image cameras to capture and analyze the effects of the lander's plume as it interacts with the lunar surface. There is a camera system that's going to be thrown off of it, so to speak, to photograph the landing. The Eagle Cam will also, it's called, and that's from the Daytona Beach Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Florida here. So we're excited to see it. We're actually going to see it land from a camera that's going to be give us a third-person view of this. So we will all have our arms wrapped around it, and we'll talk about it, of course, next week. Malapert is the name of the crater. You see the South Pole there. The Massif Malapert up there in the upper left-hand corner. That's where they intend to set this spacecraft down. It's about 17 feet tall. And there are blue areas in this mapped out region never get sunlight. So that's what they want to find out, is what kind of ice or H2O is frozen in the lunar soil in these areas that never get sunlight because they're at the very bottom of the lunar surface. So there's what it's going to look like. Okay. That's the radar that's kind of envisioning down there. Very sophisticated now how our radar is. This type of radar has been translated to your car, Marty, to tell you that you're going over in the left lane, and it beeps to tell you to get over there. Doug Forrest, I bet you know that in Los Angeles watching us today. Dave Stange, appreciate you. Steve Jokums, Mark and Tom Usciak. Go over there and pat your little brother on the back, Tom, for his outstanding photography there. Of course, Tom's an excellent photographer in his own right. And our other photography friend, Carlton Bailey, staying curious with us today. We'll follow the moon landing. It's on its way. It's gone around the Earth, and now it's on an interlunar voyage. So fingers crossed that we hope it makes it in 5 days. So, Marty, thank you for a great Streamlabs job today. Hope everyone enjoys their weekend, and hope that we can see some of you at our memorabilia show tomorrow. So, Marty, anything else?
Nope.
All right. Well, until tomorrow or till next week, when we're counting down our 1000th episode, I'm Mark Marquez saying we appreciate you so much for watching, stay curious, and wanting to bridge the space between us.